Hello again, Kevin Orlowski. Good to speak to you again, as always. And I've got lots of questions for you today. And I really appreciate that you're offering to answer questions. And there could be a lot of these. I think we should be thinking about doing a series of question and answers, because you give us a lot of information. And a lot of it begs questions. You know, people are going to ask all sorts of questions. And I think the thing is that you give us so much that people have not heard before. And also a lot that people can't kind of verify for themselves. And where would they go to verify it? Because the mainstream media and mainstream science, mainstream academia doesn't talk about the kind of things that you're telling us. So it's all up to you, really.
That's funny. That's great.
And it's almost difficult to know where to start, but I suppose the place to start is at the beginning, really. You know, in fact, in the videos that you've been producing in the last few months, you haven't given us sort of the background, really, to what I'm calling magnetic energy to heal the planet, because that's what your website has been called all these years.
Right, right.
And as you've said in one of the videos, a lot of the material on the original site doesn't appear there nowadays.
Right.
But I think could you give us, you know, a good background, really, and sort of how you fit into it and the story. Well, what's the story?
Sure. So let me just say real quick that the magnetic energy model is it reinterprets our reality from a completely different angle than what we're used to, and I think that presents quite a challenge, especially to academia, like to scientists, because we're literally saying that everything they've been taught their whole lives is essentially wrong. And that is a very hard thing. And even when you present proof, and we've seen this personally, even when you present someone with proof that the magnetic energy technology is real and that the principles behind it are accurate, it produces a whole series of reactions, especially in scientists, that everything from just flat out denial to anger to rage to just wanting to completely walk away or destroy the unit or whatever they want to do. And it produces all these reactions. And I think part of the reason I'm trying to produce videos on all these different topics is that it kind of gives the spiritual, the metaphysical, the paranormal side of it, like all these different sides of magnetic energy. So it's not simply trying to drill into, oh, this is just pure science and engineering, and let me just try to shove this down, you know, an engineer's throat or a scientist's throat. That's not the point of it. The point of this, like we've been discussing, is to bring the heart energy into this paradigm, into this model, and really do our best to not only have compassion for scientists, because think about it, if you spent your whole life learning something and you know for sure, and this is leading into my story, and you know for 100% sure that that's how things work, and then you find out, whoa, that's not how things work, it is really hard to grasp that.
Yeah, you've got to have compassion, really, for
yes.
So many.
That's right. We have to have compassion. We have to have compassion for everyone, including the scientists that will ridicule this technology, that have ridiculed it, that said it's all complete BS. We still have to have compassion for them, because the thing is, it's not easy to accept something is completely different than everything you've paid for, your school, your grad school, everything. I mean, it's so back in the 70s and 80s, when we first started working with the technology, we were making progress. We were muddling along, essentially. We were learning things. We were learning some valuable things. The units were fascinating. They're working. And like a lot of things, there's a lot of speculation as to, like, why is that really running? How is that really working? You know, and to try to fit it into a conventional framework, was almost impossible. It was like, well, wait a minute, regular electrical engineering principles just simply cannot explain what's happening here. So we're muddling along, and then something extraordinary happened. And I still don't know why it happened. I don't know if this was contracted out, that we had this was a prearranged situation previous to this incarnation, which that's what I suspect it was, of course, from the point of view I'm coming from. But for whatever it is, beings, angelic beings of light and love, tremendous love, they came to us not only in astral realm, but in waking astral projection experiences and in physical reality. They came to us and basically said, we're going to help you work on this technology. We are going to help, because their love for humanity and their love for the planet was so off the charts. I mean, what else do you want to call it? It was a super high vibration. People would say it was angelic, it was divine, it was heavenly. It was an experience that was, and it went on for years. So, and of course, you know, from our point of view, we absolutely, it was kind of a no-brainer. It wasn't a matter of, oh, we don't want your help. You know? At that point, it was kind of like, oh, really? You think we're going to refuse this? I mean, they're blowing our minds. So they started essentially with communicating about the actual units. Mistakes that were being made on the units, how to fix those mistakes, very detailed technical information. And then what they made sure of is that we verified the information we were getting from them. So we essentially, if you want to use the word, we proved that what they were giving us was accurate. And they did that over and over and over and over again with multiple units. And then what it really like turned into was this whole expansion of awareness, expansion of consciousness, and teaching us how the units are working, why they're working, and talking about universal processes and how things actually work, and how the theories and the laws that we've been going by are largely inaccurate, but more so than that, how we were interpreting our everyday phenomenon experiences, like simple things like plasma or electricity, and how it was working, how electronic circuits were working, and what's actually involved in that. Our interpretations and the conventional explanation for all of that was wildly inaccurate. And that's saying it nicely. It was wildly inaccurate. And what was really happening, they were explaining to us how electricity is really working, and what's really happening when you generate electricity. And then what's really happening when you generate magnetic energy and magnetic current, and the differences between those, and how the universe is really working, and how all systems are open, how energy is flowing in through everything, how the etheric model is truly way more accurate relative to the scientific models that have been produced on our planet in the last 100 or so years. The etheric model is far more accurate than the Einsteinian model, if you will. And so that Tesla was on the right track in so many ways. He just didn't have certain technology at the time and certain breakthroughs that he needed. But like the original person that my dad was working with, Rory Johnson, was highly guided. That engine, that magnetic energy engine, was right on the money, but the principles behind it, how it's actually working, the draw factor, the ionosphere, the universal flow, all the things I talk about in my videos, that's how we were explained. It was explained to us how all of that works and how everything kind of comes together in this universal model. And then it went on from there, explaining like phenomenon, like in our everyday lives and around the universe, to what we can expect to happen on this planet in the future. So that was back in like the 80s and 90s, and then certain changes that are going to be coming and taking place, and roughly when they would be taking place, and signs to look for, and what we needed to do, and how this technology was going to play a very vital role in the future of humanity and the survival of humanity and how we weren't the only ones involved in this process. There were other people around the planet being given downloads as well. So this was not unique to us. We were just a small part of a bigger puzzle, and just one little piece of this puzzle, and that there was a lot going on, and how the contamination from Earth was impacting other solar systems and other beings, and how it was being highly discussed, if you will, right after the first nuclear testing, how other beings immediately got involved, and a whole plan was essentially laid out for how to handle this planet, our planet, and how to make sure that things are changed in a relatively tight time frame to get us all through a pole shift and get us all through a switch and change in magnetic energy and vibration and pulse rate, so that we can move into a higher state of consciousness and move into new technology and stop essentially polluting the entire galactic region around us. And so it was just this whole thing just unfolded and teaching us over and over. And that's kind of the nutshell of it.
Okay, but let's not go too far beyond that at the moment, because it's the most extraordinary story. And I mean, in your experience, I mean, had you ever heard of anything of that nature ever happening?
Not really, no. I mean, I've heard biblical stories and stuff, you know, of angelic experiences and things like that. But there was one moment when we were all together, our team was all together, and we were discussing, like meditating, if you will, and all that. And two of these beings of light, and we were fully awake. I mean, don't get me wrong, we weren't sleeping or anything. We were wide awake. And two of these beings of light literally took me by the hands, my energy body, my astral body, if you will, by the hands, and lifted me out of my body and took me to source to learn, to experience, to raise vibration, whatever you want to say from a metaphysical or spiritual point of view. And it was beyond mind-blowing. I mean, it changed who I was. It changed me as a person, that experience. And I think they were doing that to us to like prep us for the information that we were getting, for the downloads that we would be getting, for the communication, and to make us, you know, kind of more in sync, like in synchronization with the revelations that we were receiving. And so, and the presence of love, I'm telling you, this all comes back again to love. It's the craziest thing, because the presence of love they had was so overwhelming. It was so mind-blowing. And we knew at that moment, and we knew just with the whole experience, that this was all about bringing technology and love together for the survival of humanity. And that these beings had a deep, deep love for humanity and for the planet itself, as well as other beings. But it wasn't like, oh, we're just going to wipe you guys out, you know, because you were bad or something, you know, like, you know, you see the old Christian, let's have another flood. Here comes Armageddon. You know, I mean, like all these things. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, you know, it was so much love. It was like, we're going to try to help humanity. We're going to try to rescue you. You guys are going down a road to extinction that is so close around the corner. You have no idea how close you are to making yourselves extinct. And we are going to do what we can to prevent that in a very detailed, perfectly orchestrated program, where we're giving information to people around the planet. We're making geophysical changes to the planet as well, but we're going to slowly seed in this information and do it very carefully, do it non-disruptively as much as possible. And then at the right time, it will just blow up it'll just expand and be accepted all over the globe, essentially. So all of this has just been this very carefully orchestrated, quiet little back, you know, just a simple program to get these ideas, this technology out there, energetically out there, quietly out there. And then at the right moment, all of the magnetic technology will encompass essentially our entire existence, our whole planet, and help save us from the catastrophes that are imminent, essentially.
You're saying that, I mean, you use the word angelic beings of light. I mean, in some ways, you know, because we've kind of grown up on Star Trek and that sort of thing, it might be easy
Yeah.
to imagine that it could have been like extraterrestrials who would have beamed down, you know, teleported down into your living room and that sort of thing.
Yep. It
But
absolutely could have been. I mean, from my point of view now, like when we look back at it or we talk about the experiences and stuff and the communication. So what they did, at least this is my perception. Okay. So I can only give my perception on this. It seemed like what they did was they raised our vibration and raised us enough so that they could communicate with us essentially, how do you say it? Clairaudient.
oh yes, yeah.
So it was like a clairaudient experience where you would hear them, like almost like hearing like a voice in your head, very clear, very loud. And so all of that process didn't stop for us. It still hasn't even stopped for me. So I mean, like if there's something I need to know, or if there's some meeting I need to go to, they'll whisk me off, or I'll, get a message or a revelation or something, so if there's anything I need to know, I'll still be told it. But whatever it is, they were trying to help us. And yeah, you know what? Were they aliens? I don't know. Were they simply angelic from an angelic realm, a much higher realm, or part of our future? I don't know. All I know is that their presence was like pure love, pure light, and they made it very clear that they had the highest of intentions for humanity and for the planet. And it's funny because you think, well, you think about the scientific discoveries that have taken place over time, including Tesla, and how they had visions, revelations, extraordinary experiences, dreams, things that they can't explain. When you really look back into stories, so many of our ideas throughout the ages have come from these extraordinary experiences where people have had visions, dreams, visitations. I even know people right now in my personal life that are brilliant scientists that literally have had so many of their ideas come from those type of experiences. And I guess what the point I'm making is that it's not totally crazy to have those experiences, and that there's a lot of interconnectivity between us and higher realms and other beings, and we're in an open system. And when you start thinking in terms of magnetic energy, I mean, they're right next door, so because we have this isolation, like the earth is so far away from everything that it's impossible to have any communication with other beings. But from a magnetic energy point of view, it's the exact opposite. We're right next door to each other. I mean, they're literally a seconds away, so it's
when you talk about other scientists through the ages who've had these kind of revelations and so on, I mean, you're talking there about how there will be other beings who would kind of use the word interfere with the evolution of humanity and so on. Usually, perhaps it's in a positive way, but it's nevertheless it's sort of pushing us along,
right,
pushing us along, whatever. But let's see if we can get this in the right kind of perspective. What you were saying was that the beings who came to you were saying that if you don't get your act together, humanity is going to destroy itself.
Right. That we're in
Destroy
very deep doo-doo. Very deep doo-doo. And that we have to change and get our acts together like quick, like fast, within decades, relative to a larger time frame.
Yeah, so there was absolutely huge significance to this, what was happening.
Yeah, well, they said there was huge significance from their point of view of what we felt like, or what we were being told, or what we were being communicated. That was the perspective that they were bringing to us. We weren't really thinking that way. We weren't really thinking, oh my God, humanity's doomed. I mean, as far as we could tell, everything seemed fine, other than all the normal issues, like the little wars here and there and all the, scarcity and all the BS around the planet. But we weren't really thinking in terms of like extinction. But I mean, they were literally like bringing the word up extinction, like we're getting so close to extinction that there have to be major changes that take place. So,
No, you were saying we. Now, who was we? Who was involved at that stage?
oh, just our core team at that time. And for security reasons, I can't even name the people on that team at this point because I can't say their names
You must
because
have
it's
been pretty
enough.
young at that stage, were you?
I was pretty young. Yeah, I was a teenager. So,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
but I gravitated toward all of this since I was a child. I worked with my dad on this stuff since I was young, even a child. And I grew up working in labs and shops and worked with my dad all the time on this. And then when the magnetic energy technology came into the picture, I was absolutely gravitated to it and just worked with him very closely on it from the get-go. So it was something that I was very closely involved with, and for whatever reason I resonated very, very much with it. So
So all the detailed information you got about how to build these units. I mean,
mhm.
you'd started off pretty much from scratch, had you?
Well, not entirely from scratch because we already had working units. So I mean, we already had the proof and this right in front of us at that point. So I mean, like, but the difference is though what they brought to the table, like we just had the little baby first step to what was happening, and what they brought to the table was exponentially way more profound and way greater than anything we could have even dreamed of. I mean, like it was off the charts basically. And we had no idea. I mean, and my dad, we would laugh about it for years. We had absolutely no idea what we were getting into. um you know,
But
we
they were
were
giving you all sorts of highly technical, detailed.
highly technical details, technical processes, the mechanical processes involved, how pulse rates and the anti-gravity concepts and all of that play into the units, how every little concept that I talk about on the videos and I've written about on the websites and stuff, every little thing, pretty much all those higher level concepts, we were taught pretty much all of that stuff. Because before that, the concepts that we had, we were barely muddling along with trying to even grasp how on earth are the units even working? Like, how do they even function? And so, they just took it to the whole next level and said, this is how this works. This is how these function. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you need to change. This is what will make it better. And I mean, I'm talking down to details. You're at 0.25, it needs to be 0.28. Like, I mean, we're talking details, like just ridiculous level of detail. And I mean, everything down to that coil is being wound too tightly. You have to, that will constrict the flow for this particular process. You have to you can't use a professional winding device. You have to wind that by hand or make your settings so that is a loose coil. That has to be a loose coil. Otherwise the polarities will not work properly on that coil. Just like ridiculous levels of detail.
You didn't have these beings kind of looking over your shoulder while you were working.
I'm sure they were, and it would be funny if we ever get to revisit that. If you could, see them, they're probably standing over there going, "Oh, they just don't get it." Another mistake, another mistake. I was like, "Oh, these guys." And one of the biggest challenges of the whole process was, and it was this whole thing over and over, was you have to stop thinking electrically. You have to stop trying to incorporate all of these ideas into the electrical paradigm, because that's the problem. The electrical paradigm is the problem. And you have to move beyond that. You have to let go of all the things that you know as facts about electricity and how things work and how that really, how that runs the universe. That's all the problem. And yes, it does work, but it works at such a high cost and such a cost to the planet and to humanity and beyond that it's not sustainable. Electricity is not a sustainable power source. We were told that over and over. You have to stop with this. You don't think about using the magnetic units to make more electricity. because that's the first thing we all, we would think, oh my God, think about how many megawatts you could generate with this unit. My goodness, we'll just hook this thing right up to the grid. We're going to power the whole damn neighborhood with this thing. No, they're like, no, what are you doing? That's not the point of any of this. Stop that. You have to stop thinking electrically. And you have to embrace new ideas and new concepts that have to do with a flow of energy that is recycled back into the system, that doesn't force an etheric extraction like electricity does, but it attracts an etheric extraction with a neutral polarity. You have to get into a new model, because if you don't, you're going to just abuse this technology and it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. Not to mention, it's 1,000 times better than electricity, because it allows you to essentially formulate, reformulate, and deformulate matter at will, and have anti-gravitic devices and everything else. So, I mean, you've got to get beyond the old electrical model, because it's not helping humanity, and it's not a sustainable model. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I really do hope that our viewers can grasp the significance of all this, and the importance of this. And I mean, you know what we're like. It's easy to kind of dismiss all this talk about revelations and all the stuff that goes with it. But actually, the reality is that it did happen. It does happen. And in this instance, like you were saying, we were told to get the act together, and because if not, doomsday.
Right. Well, and there's other people around the planet that got very, very similar information that we've talked to over the years, that had the same type of experiences, the same type of revelations. And I'm hesitant to talk about it because from a scientific point of view, if you will, not that I'm a scientist, but from a scientific point of view, it does kind of devalue the information. And that's one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to talk about it. But at the same time, I like to remind people that some of the most brilliant minds in our recent history had revelatory experiences. They got a lot of their ideas in ways that they can't explain and don't understand, including Tesla, including Steinmetz, including even Einstein, and including the list is a long list. And even to this day, pretty famous physicists around the planet will talk about dreams that they have where they're lucid dreaming and they're being guided to solve a problem that they're working on. And they don't know exactly how it all works, but they're being guided and they're getting extraordinary information that they didn't just simply get through trial and error in a lab. They came in with the solution to work. They came to work with the solution. I mean, they got it while they were lucid dreaming or astral projecting or whatever you want to call it. They had an experience, they had a visitation, they had a revelation. And it's more common than people think, but people don't like to talk about it. And I understand, because you don't want to be ridiculed. And like, oh God, another whack.
It does actually seem to be something of a kind of general principle that when one reaches a stage of, should we say, expertise or commitment to a particular thing. I mean, people like singer-songwriters will say that they heard the melody in their dream, or they heard a lyric somehow, it just came to them somehow.
Yes.
And artists will say, this image just came to me, and it somehow that there is some sort of connection,
for sure,
between ourselves and the universe.
That's right.
Life.
We're so highly connected on so many levels with higher beings, with angelic, if you want, angelic beings, higher consciousness. I mean, we're connected all the time. It's just a matter of how open are we to it. I mean, the magnetic energy technology, it was made so clear to us, this is a heart-centered, love-based technology. This is like heart stuff. The electrical stuff is more like head stuff, where you're trying to really hard to logically, rationally believe in something that doesn't necessarily resonate great in your heart, but you're seeing these results and you're seeing this, electrical things working and running, but it's not really resonating great in your heart. But we've learned as humanity to kind of tune out tune out our hearts and to ignore that energy. The magnetic energy is all about the heart. It's all about love. It's all about expanding that awareness. And I mean, you want to talk about the electricity is like just a beautiful example of patriarchy at its best. Pure raw masculine, forcing nature to bend at your will energy. And the magnetic energy is kind of like the return of the goddess energy, the balance of it, and like bringing that balance together so that we can have a more balanced humanity where we embrace our divine feminine side as well as our masculine side and bring the best of both worlds together and stop pushing the goddess off to the back, and think we're going to rule the world and rule nature with atomic bombs and electricity. Let's bring it all back together and bring love back into the equation. And so you can kind of get the idea.
You were saying that all of this was going on in the 70s and the 80s.
Mostly 80s and 90s. And then still even into the 2000s. So
and these beings were talking about the urgency of of getting our act together.
Yeah.
And that's now what, the 3 decades ago.
Yeah. Well, and they made it clear that their time frame is a lot different, because when we think urgency, I'm like, you mean by like next month? Like we want instant gratification, instant results right now. But no, they made it clear that everything that they were doing time wise, and it's interesting because now that I've been down this road and we can look back and realize at a higher dimension how you can see all events at once. So time is not linear when you're at a higher dimension. And magnetic energy technology really allows you to kind of look at all events at once and see what's happening, so you're not trapped essentially in linear time. And so I can see that they started that process back then because that was part of a very long program, and they started it with a lot of people. Like I said, we were just one little example of what was going on around the globe. I've talked to enough people around the globe in different countries and everything. They had the same exact ideas, same exact concepts. The words might have been slightly different, but the concepts were right on the money. Like they were just paralleled to us. And in the same time frame, they were receiving the same type of information. So I think that was the very beginning of this program. And when they say the urgency is there, I think they were thinking in terms of decades. But it's also, though, that this decade that we're entering into, this kind of, from what my understanding and what I've been told, if you will, that this is the decade of transformation. We're entering into it right now. This is very, very pivotal on this planet, this next decade. So that was all essentially warm up and getting things prepared, getting things in place. And it got to that point where, okay, everything is locked in, everything's in place. Now it's just a matter of it unfolding and being executed. And so it's,
yeah. It's been developing quietly in the background over the last 30, 40 years, or what? I mean, it seems to have gone sort of fairly quiet until fairly recently, when you've started doing these videos. I mean, is it just because you feel that the time now is right to be bringing?
Yeah, definitely. For whatever reason, the whole idea of doing the videos was very clear guidance that it was time for me to start doing those. Mm-hmm. And that it was just that this is it. Okay, you got to start doing them right now, essentially. And so if I'm guided to do something, obviously I've got to do it. I mean, if I'm capable, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do whatever I can to, help this process. And so, yeah, we'll see what's going to unfold from there. As far as the technology goes, there's been, I often talk about this, that there's top secret programs, there's government programs, there's black ops programs that have this technology. They've had it for a long time. And there's other various groups around the planet that have this technology, and they've had it, just been quietly hanging on to it or working with it. And I'm sure at some points those different parties will come into play as far as, the release of the technology. And so but I'm just going to continue to do whatever it is I'm guided to do. And if that, you know, helps, then yeah, I'm happy to do my little part in this. So yeah, I'll just continue to just plug away, you know,
Mm.
so.
Mm. So you don't know the exact timing of it.
I don't know the exact timing, but but yeah, we're entering into a pretty significant decade in the big picture, very significant.
Mhm.
So